Hey, we're back in the friendly confines of the DPB studio. For all of you that were able to catch my last podcast, it was live from no other than Darren Bailey's office down in Louisville, Illinois. I was there all day, election day, in support of my friend. Uh, he's a brother in Christ. He has done more, I believe, for this state, the state of Illinois, in the past 7 years than any other elected official. See, I think that's what we're going to get to, right? It's go time. It's go time. We're seeing it at the national level, the state level, the county level. We don't have time. More in 2024 is real. And we are right on the cusp of an election in November. We just came out of the primary. We know now who those candidates are. In the case of Darren Bailey, it's unfortunate, but is it really? Darren Bailey continues to expose the ugliness, the corruption, the fractured brokenness of the Republican Party. Mike Bost is not the future of this country. He's not the future of the state. Unfortunately, Mike is a career politician who even self-admittedly says he's a governing conservative. Do we know what a governing conservative is? Do you know? I know that you do. Hold on. Let me get my comment section on, as I know that many of you will be dropping in today. I didn't have a thumbnail put up there, just like going live from Effingham was only on Facebook. I had a little technical difficulties trying to launch my podcast from my handheld device, my cell phone. So today, my friend and colleague Kat Peterson, who usually does my thumbnails, is steeped in all things post-election down in Springfield. She sent me some messages yesterday, and you're right. It is Republicans gone wild. Some Republicans believe that there's been little moral victories on their side of the aisle. Not on their side of the aisle. They're on the same side of the aisle, which is kind of interesting. On their side of the ledger, whatever that side is, because it's the ledger of the land of make-believe, because they have sold out to the Democrat Party and continue to do that. So anyhow, governing conservatives. What is a governing conservative? Because that is what we heard from Mike Bost, and that is why I believe today, go time, and recapping what transpired on Tuesday is so important. And as you will be able to see here shortly, there he is right there. The man, the myth, the legend with it looks. Hey, did you get a haircut?
I sure did.
You got all of them cut, as like someone
all of
once
them.
said. You got, except the beard. You did not
Yeah,
trim the beard up.
I kept the beard.
You're looking good.
Thanks.
I just saw the shadow of someone walking past the.
That was my lovely wife in the background.
Tell her I can't wait for her to jump into the comments section. But I don't know if you heard the opening, Ryan. Basically, here we are. It's go time. Lara Trump is going to take the RNC in a whole new direction. It's a new Republican Party, and it's out there. It's out there in many news articles. We know that there was a cleaning of the leadership positions at the national level. Now the rebranding of the GOP into MEGA can be accelerated with the Trump team's takeover. That's what they call it, the Trump team's takeover, which it is.
Yeah.
We had to take it back. No different than the Democrat Party. They're not going to concede. They're not going to come and deliver or offer up territory that they've already captured. You got to take it back. And I believe it's a brilliant move by President Trump to put Lara, his daughter-in-law, in that chairwoman's position. Obviously, they did a lot of behind-the-scenes work to get her there. That doesn't take anything away from Mr. Whatley, who is the chairperson. But ultimately, it's good to have a chairman and a chairwoman, and she is going to take us in a new direction. What that looks like, I'd like to cover that a little bit today in the latter part of the show, maybe in the second half hour. But out of the gate, here we are after Tuesday's primary election. I was just mentioning that Darren Bailey. I had an opportunity. I was supposed to go to dinner with Darren and Cindy last night down in Effingham. Unfortunately, I was delayed in getting home from my daytime gig right now, and therefore my wife and I weren't able to make dinner with Darren and Cindy. But I spoke with them a couple different times. Great spirits. He gets it. He understands it. He knows that he was outspent $2 million to 400,000. That does impact an election. But more importantly, the Trump endorsement, contrary to the fact that it was not really an endorsement of Mike Bost as much as it was to let Darren know that he still respects him and that he is indeed somebody that is favorable. He was willing to campaign for him, but he was in a position where he felt compelled that he had to endorse. Obviously, that did affect the election. But as Darren said, everything they threw at Darren Bailey, everything, and this is not new, right? It happened in the gubernatorial race. It happened in a state Senate seat race. It happened in his state rep race. Everything they threw at him, they were only, even a Trump endorsement, barely got Mike Bost over the finish line.
Yep.
So that tells me something. And I'm going to have Darren on hopefully Tuesday. I'd love for you to be here too, if you can.
Yeah.
I asked Darren something and felt a little salty because he had left a message for me, which was very heartfelt, and I'm going to hold that near and dear to my heart for a very long time. But basically, before I was able to listen to his message, he didn't realize we were going to dinner last night. His wife hadn't brought him up to speed on that event that was scheduled, and therefore he was just talking about getting together with Tanya and I, breaking bread, having a good time. And during that conversation, before I listened to his heartfelt message that he left on my voicemail, I said, Darren, it's go time, though. We don't have time to lay back. This is what Laura Trump's telling us. Would you consider being the leader of the state party for the RNC? And he said, David Paul, I'm just at this point sitting back, waiting for God to give me direction. And therefore, I'm not going to commit to something like that. And that's an honest answer. I mean, there is a gentleman who is heading up the Trump delegation right now, Mark Shaw, who's putting his hat into that for that position of the RNC. Currently, those two positions. So just to break it down for you out there listening, the RNC, the Republican National Committee, they're part of what's called the Central States Committee, which is part of why it's so important we have precinct committee people, because each precinct committee person chooses a county chair at a convention. That convention has to take place 29 days following a primary election. Right. So, and naturally so, because now the precinct committee people who were running for precinct positions are now elected, meaning they were chosen in this primary. But those precinct committee people come together no later than 29 days after a primary, and they vote for who their county Republican chairperson is going to be. They also choose every 4 years the Central States Committee. The Central States Committee is made up of individuals who are part of a congressional district. So there are 17 congressional districts in Illinois. I don't know how many in your state, if you're listening outside of Illinois, but your congressional districts have a Central State member. That Central State Committee, basically with the chair, the state chair, our state chair happens to be Don Tracy right now. They also have a chairperson that's a woman, and a chairman for the RNC. Currently, the chairman is Rich Porter, a self-professed Trump hater, anti-Trumper, and Demetra Dematra, who is a beautiful human being. She is a pro-Trumper, but still her tenure is up, whether she will retain that position. Mark Shaw is running for that position that Rich Porter is vacating. So it's part of why it is we have precinct committee people. And I know that I kind of went down a rabbit hole with that, but that's what I was asking Darren to take on.
Yeah.
That way he could work directly with the national RNC and Lara Trump.
Right.
I don't think Darren is done yet. My point being is Darren started this grassroots movement, and maybe it's time for him just to kick back, because that's what his voicemail message said to me. He is looking forward to spending time with his family, with his 13 grandchildren. Was it
Yeah,
14?
that's a lot.
It seems to multiply every other month. But
yeah.
his three sons and his daughter and their spouses, I mean, they were in Edwardsville when I spoke with him yesterday to cancel our dinner, and they happened to be stocking the back of their vehicle with groceries from a Sam's Club. And they were preparing for the feast of all feasts that was going to happen this weekend. It's the weekend before Easter. And they were looking forward. Well, I digress. He said, David Paul, do you realize how amazing it is just to be in a grocery store doing this? And I started really putting that in perspective. This man has been under so much pressure.
Yep.
I can't even imagine. I mean, it's one thing for, yours truly, your host here, to run for state rep. That's how I started off, was with Darren running for state rep, myself running for state rep. I can't imagine the responsibility that has been on his shoulders as he started a movement to restore Illinois, to boldly and courageously go out and take back our state. Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Because to this day, he took on the governor. When you talk about what have you accomplished, and I say this to Darren's opponent or anybody that has an elected position, what have you done? What can we point back to? And please don't tell me that he helped during a time of crisis because your kid, something happened, a DUI or a driver's license, or maybe you had a death of a child or a loved one, and your representative stepped in. That is all and well. It is. That's what a representative should be doing. But I'm talking about things that actually move the needle in, and not to say, disparage any of those actions, because they're important to you at the time. If a state representative or a state senator or a governor or a congressman is stepping in and helping in a crisis. But what can we really point to? Darren Bailey, on behalf of the entire state of Illinois, took on the edicts, the unconstitutional mandates of the governor of Illinois.
That's when I first started following him, figured out who he was.
Then he turned around, and not only did he sue him once, he sued him twice. He won both of those lawsuits. Then he was kicked off the House floor, which was at that time in the convention center of this Bank of Springfield, for not putting on his mask, boldly standing up, challenging the system. The gun ban, Darren has led the way. I find it fascinating. Darren came out on New Year's Eve and had the picture that is forever
a poster child.
The poster in my mind of the gun mandate, and said, "Come and get him, JB. Come and get me. Come and arrest me." Darren keeps challenging, pushing the envelope against the tyranny that has captivated our country. And that is who Darren Bailey is. And that's why I know I'm spending a lot of time talking about Darren here to lead off the post-election. But that is why I did my show. That's why I gave up my election day to go down to Effingham to support a God-first candidate. I have yet to really meet too many God-first candidates. And when I do, I get behind them. I support them. So hopefully I will be able to have him on Tuesday. I believe he He said his schedule's pretty open right now, except for when they decide it's go time at the Bailey Farms, and they have to go into the
Yep.
fields and plant close to 30,000, well,
Mm.
18,000 acres. I think they plant a little bit more than that because Darren's father manages about 30,000. And combined, they've got, I think it's 30,000 to 35,000 acres. It could be more. I'm just throwing numbers out there. I'm going by what I hear because they're constantly selling their farms too. But you know what? I support Darren Bailey. I will continue to support Darren Bailey. I possibly believe that Darren Bailey, I don't know. I'm going out there. I don't know what's next. I don't know if it's a run again for Congress, a run for U.S. Senator here in Illinois. If it's a run for governor, I'd like to see Darren run for president someday.
Yeah.
I truly believe it's his temperament, it's his faith that would make the best president ever. Darren
Well,
Bailey for
and you
president.
look at the success that Lincoln had. He ran and lost, ran and lost, ran and lost, and then he ran and won presidency. Maybe there's a similar path where he's going to put in the fight and get him out there and get out in front of it and then win the presidency. You never know how these paths work out.
No, you don't. And but Ryan, let's get back to it. It's go time.
Yep.
And we have the candidates we have. So here locally for us in McLean County, we had a couple contested county board races. George went in District 2 or District 3, ran against, he's the incumbent, had an opponent in Brian Loeffler. Brian Loeffler was able to win that race. In District 2, Jim Solner stepped away. That made it an open seat. We had a newcomer in Mike O'Neill put in for that race. And then the county chair of the party, Republican Party, Dennis Grunler, they ran against each other. Mike O'Neill was successful, and therefore that's who we have. We have those two candidates representing those county board seats going forward in the fall. We also have some other contested, or all of the races will be contested, but we also have some other candidates. District 5, Chad Burke, Randy Knapp, Susan Schaefer in number 9. You have David Dunn, a newcomer to politics here locally, but yet a very dynamic young man. David Dunn will be in District 7. Right now, there is a person or a Republican in District 7 in Jeff Tompkins. The other person is Val Lehman. She is a Democrat. And that's who David Dunn will be running against, is Val Lehman. So we have some seats that we have to go after. Once again, 9, 7, and 2 and 5, because of the John McIntyre as chair stepped back. Therefore, it created a runoff for the last 2 years of John's tenure. And Randy Knapp is our candidate. Chad Burke is opposing the vice chair of the McLean County Board, which is Elizabeth Johnston. We need Chad in there. I will do everything I can to help get Chad that seat. We need him. If Chad were to win, that would put it at 11-9. If we maintain what we currently have, Chad wins. Oh, I almost forgot about my good friend. Ross Webb is running for the vacated seat of Chuck Erickson, which we're going to it's a good segue into it. So don't forget Ross Webb. Our county board races are critical to McLean County. I'm sure they are in the county near you, because school board races, township races, library board races, they are all they're all in play. We finally are waking up as Republicans, realizing that is how the socialist Marxist movement started in this country, is at the lowest levels of government, where they seated people in who eventually rose up to positions like, I'll have to use J.B. Pritzker's quote, like, even coming from a school board, they kind of want to run for governor. He was alluding to, well, where did you come from, JB? Where did you come from?
Yeah.
Because I know the last I heard, you were on a recorded line with the FBI trying to barter and position yourself for a U.S. Senate seat of one Barack Hussein Obama.
Funny how that worked out.
Yeah. So those county boards, my point being is those county boards, Ryan, are critical.
Yeah.
The one here locally, we have a 10-10 disadvantage. That's right. I said it.
Yeah. It
It's a
really is a disadvantage.
disadvantage because it's gridlock. It's going nowhere. We have a chance with the capturing of Chad Burke, um, and David Dunn and Ross Webb. That would kind of be maintaining it. So at least solidifying those two seats, we could flip this thing back to 11-9, 12-8.
Mm-hmm.
Then we know we're covering some territory. So I'm optimistic. It's go time, and we need to get behind those candidates and support them. That's who we have now, and that leads me to the race in the 88th state rep district. I know you were paying attention to it, Ryan.
Yep.
I was going to jump on your show with you.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about. You probably have seen the numbers on Chuck Erickson and Regan Daring.
Yeah. So I caught the first about hour of the numbers coming through Tuesday, and they looked close early on, and I think Regan pulled away, and Chuck conceded later on in the evening. But again, we talked about it. It's two very good candidates that should both be in Springfield. If we could have had a chance to pick two, we would have sent both of them. But I think that's why you want to be able to do that. You want that struggle of two very good candidates in primary season, because if one fails, at least you've got one that's going to be up against Democrats in November. So at the very least, you have two very strong candidates, and unfortunately, we only get to take one to Springfield.
Well, and interesting, and I have to put it out there because I didn't really get behind either candidate because as I've said before on this show, I am friends with both Regan and Chuck. I have a long relationship and friendship with Chuck. And whether it's mission trips, whether it's going to Cubs games, and I fully supported Chuck running. Unfortunately, Chuck made some, I believe, catastrophic mistakes in his campaign. I was willing to tell him about that. I wasn't shy because he is a friend. I think sometimes friends have to tell people or tell their friends the tough things. If everybody just always agrees with me, it's one thing. When people don't agree with me, that's where I'm going to learn. I think we all learn when people don't agree with this, because we have to then fortify why it is we have a position that we have and a belief system that we have. Needless to say, I don't think it helped Chuck's campaign that he included Dan Brady in his campaign, because I believe that enough people here locally do not support Dan any longer. That was proven through my time as running against Dan. I went from 25% of the electorate in 2018 to 38% in 2020. Dan doesn't win if at that trajectory, a candidate like me wins that third go around, the Thrilla in Manila. I take on Dan Brady in the jungle, and it just wasn't going to happen because of the redistricting of the maps. And Dan was redistricted out, but that's the part that I'm going to go public with right now here on my show. Dan Brady held an event to kick off Chuck's campaign at Rob Dobbs. And if you get a chance, definitely go out and dine at Rob Dobbs, a great restaurant. Rob and Julie Dobsky are pillars to the Republican Party. Support them. It is a great dining experience. If you haven't been there, go out to Rob Dobbs and support Rob and Julie. They do so much for the Republican Party as a whole, not only locally, but statewide and nationally. So support them. But Chuck had his kickoff with Dan Brady starting off, and Dan had to promote. He had a picture of the 88th district map, and he had to tell everyone in attendance that day that this map was drawn for him. I don't know about you. I have a problem with that when a public official or a formally elected public official starts making a proclamation that maps were drawn for them.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Well, it's part of the reason why he's lost popularity.
Yeah.
Because it's not about you, Dan.
Right.
It really isn't. but everything that you've done to this point is the reason we are where we're at as a party.
Yep.
The condition of the Republican Party in the state of Illinois, a lot of that responsibility is at the feet of any representative or any state senator who has
Yep.
held a position, because they are complicit in what transpired to lead us to this point right now. Illinois is broken. See how I did that? I
Yeah.
don't
That
even
was
have
nice.
the opening to do that with my audio. I'm creating my own
You're good.
audio here.
Your own sound effect going forward.
Illinois is broken, and they're party to that brokenness. And if they can't stand up and admit it, a lot of Republicans want to go back. Who drew those maps? Dan. Democrats, of course. Sorry. I'm reading comments from the chat. That would be none other than the beautiful wife of mine. Who drew those maps, Dan? Democrats. Actually, those were drawn in conjunction with Republicans like Dan, so he can stand up in front of a crowd and profess this map was drawn for me because I made sure that I cut deals behind closed doors, not representing the people of Illinois, but representing the future of Dan Brady. And I'm not here to pounce on Dan. A lot of people like Dan, and for whatever it's worth, that's great. I don't like any politician. I love when Bongino says that.
Yeah.
Because they're a tool to be used for fortifying this little document, the Constitution of the United States. Outside of that, I would prefer if they went to wherever, whether it's the county board, the General Assembly of Springfield, or Washington, D.C., and literally campaign on the fact that I'm going to do nothing.
Yeah.
And sit back.
Yep.
I would rather they do that. That's called limited government.
Yep.
But what we have now is not limited government. No. It is government gone wild, gone crazy.
When you have Senate leadership coming out and going behind closed doors at the U.S. level and telling the members don't vote for term limits for leadership because they want term leaders. They don't want leaders to be termed out, Republican leadership. That's exactly why we need term limits, because you have Mitch McConnell who's freezing up in conferences and he's too old to think straight. And he's been a Republican leader for 100 years. That's why we need term leadership in general, term limits and leadership and in general, because people are starved for power. They will spend 60 years in Congress and in leadership roles that are broken. It's insane.
I'm trying to get the spattle off of my screen. I have this little white thing centered, and I started moving it, and the screen all started shifting. So I probably should wait till later, because yours truly, DPB, can screw things up on his podcast very quickly. So I'll just use this wipe that I just exposed to clean my handheld device. But it's so true. They are so against, and just that's another segue. There will be a convention of states meeting here, especially for New Illinois, right here in McLean County. There is going to be a gathering. I think is it at the Chateau? Hold on.
Yes,
I'm going to find out.
I shared that earlier, I think.
Did you share it? Can you give us the details on that? Because that's important. Chapin Rose is going to be speaking. There's a professor from Loyola in the business financing area that's going to be there, because people are finally getting upset. I know they said, oh, you can't separate from Chicago. Well, when the ship is burning at sea, I would rather take my chances in the ocean or in the body of water that the ship was in than to remain on a burning ship, because it is burning. It is broken, crushed.
All right, so we got the details.
Go ahead.
April 4th through April 6th at the Chateau Hotel and Conference Center in Bloomington, 5:45 p.m. and then runs through the 6th at 5 p.m.
So I don't know if you can put up a link for that in the chat. I'm sure you can. Definitely give some consideration. Real leaders. Once again, I don't necessarily say that the legitimacy of a new Illinois, is it possible? Yes, there's a constitutional path to creating basically a succession, a separation of the state of Illinois, annexing the northeast corner from the rest of the state. There is a constitutional path to that happening. Is it an uphill climb? By all means. But the entire experiment of who we are as a people here in the United States of America, this Constitution was drafted as an uphill climb. It continues to be so here in 2024. If you have a chance, get to the conference for the very least to learn something. But I know that we went down that rabbit hole as we were talking about Chuck and Regan, and
Yeah,
that had everything to do with the mapping, the unfair maps, what the current condition of the Republican Party is in the state of Illinois. So much to say about that because it is fascinating. Oh, look at that. It's
there
a
it
city.
is.
Oh, because yes, I heard it promoted on Cities 92.9.
Yep,
I heard the advertisement for it, which is really cool. I'm glad that the radio, because the radio piece also worked for us. A little
yep.
segue into Tom Homan. I think tickets are pretty much sold out, or not that they're sold out. We have Tom Homan coming into town tomorrow night, former director of ICE, part of Homeland Security, dynamic human being of the Trump administration, to talk
Yeah,
about the illegal immigration crisis that's facing us. Darren LaHood's going to be there. I know Chris Balkema, who is just won the 53rd state Senate nomination for the Republican Party, is going to be in attendance. And it's going to be a great time there. And so if you get an opportunity, I think you can still come and sit in the back if you would like. Unfortunately, we had to cap it off. And granted, timing wasn't the best, but it's go time.
hmm
Like I said, we are in a position that we've never been in this country before. This laying back, yeah, is it just a couple days after a primary election? Yes, but
Yep.
it shows the urgency we must have going into November of this year. Um, I don't know about you. I'm super pumped about it.
Yeah.
It's easy to lay back and say, gosh, this didn't work out. Well, it didn't, it
Well,
didn't work out for a lot of people, but
yeah,
it doesn't
it
matter.
speaks to the volume of low turnout, like we talked about before Tuesday. Everybody's so geared up for a general election. When they think the head candidates have it, they stay home. And what we talked about was the importance of these local elections. Yes, it's important to keep Trump in the race, but that's just a small part of what it happens locally. Your local races are, if not more important than the national races, because everything is local. And
Well,
these lower
well,
turnouts have been crazy.
and when you say everything, all politics are local, what we're talking about is the impact that the national issues like immigration have on the kitchen table.
Hmm.
That's what we called my cabinet. Uh, my When I had my campaign team put together, we always had the meetings at the kitchen table,
Hmm.
and they were the kitchen cabinet for the
Yeah.
DPB run. But you're right, voter turnout, and I want to get to that too because this is
Hmm.
also part of what Laura Trump is putting forth. But I want to make sure that we give credence to all of these races.
Yep.
Chuck and Regan. I started down the road of talking about Dan Brady, Chuck choosing Dan Brady. Taking me out to lunch and saying, here, I'm going to have Dan and Bill Brady be part of because I need everybody. I said, no, Chuck, you just need to be true to who you are as
Right.
a conservative.
Mm.
Unfortunately, he failed to do that. He talked about being a conservative, but he surrounded
What do
himself
you
with,
suppose the reason was for bringing him on? Just as
well,
someone
I
who's been
think
experienced down the road, to help him on his campaign, or, well, what was the reason that he would have had him on the campaign?
Dan, so many people, so many Republicans in McLean County believe that they have to hold on to the past to go into the future. That is so untrue. Yours
Right.
truly would never do that. In fact, I'm totally against the past because the past is part of what has led us to where we're at
Yeah.
today. It's time
Yeah.
that we shut off the past and go in a new direction. And we're going to talk a little bit about a new direction because we're going to have a new
Yep.
direction with the Republican Party here local too. Um, Dan was going to possibly run for that seat, and Chuck held off and waited for Dan to make a decision whether it was going to be the 17th congressional district, where Joe McGraw was successful in beating Scott Crawl. Scott Crawl is a dynamic, great guy,
Yep.
grassroots. Once again, Joe McGraw is the pick of the NRCC. However, I believe that Joe also is somebody that can unseat Eric Sorensen
Right.
uh, because of his time that he spent on the bench, also because of his faith. I think
Mhm.
Joe is a legitimate, faithful person, a God-first
Mhm.
candidate. I support both Scott and Joe, but I definitely supported Joe for the seat or for the nomination because I believe his years on the bench help with what we're facing, the
Yeah.
crime in the streets, the economy, the direct attack on law enforcement. There's so many things that Joe is going to be better versed at for a short period of time. I don't want him there forever. Like I said,
Right. Yep.
I don't care who he is. I don't get attached to people. I like people, but
Yep.
they're there to do a job.
Yep.
They're there to represent us. But I started alluding to the fact that Dan Brady in the Erickson campaign was an anchor for the sake that he didn't make a decision. He had a vengeance or a vindictiveness about him because Reagan came out and announced before Dan made a decision what he was going to do. He felt that he had earned, I like this, or
Yeah,
deserved,
entitled. Yeah.
entitled to make
Yeah.
the move before anybody else makes a move. And
Mhm.
Regan jumped on it, got out there. I kept pleading with Chuck to announce immediately
Yep.
you will be the second one in. You could have been the first one in. Chuck said, well, you told me that I couldn't win a three-way race. I said, not only could you not win a three-way race, Dan Brady would not have beat Regan Deering.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, you were a better candidate than Dan Brady.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it is what it is. And like I said, it's not about the personality, whatever that is. It's about the
Yeah.
policy. The reason
Right.
I don't agree with Dan Brady, like I don't agree with Mike Boss, I don't believe that anyone should be in office for 40 years.
Exactly. That's the whole point of this. Yeah.
That's the essence. And so
Right.
does it become personal? Possibly, because you have the ability to remove yourself from office at any time. And they say,
Right.
well, Dan Brady used to say something to me that was comical. Oh, the elector decides term limits. I'm like, Dan, that is so much. I've
No,
seen the
it's
double
the
dealing, the
individual.
workmanship of the
That's
lobbyists, PACs, the political action committees,
uh,
and how they prop up
no.
candidates. And
Right.
all they want out of it, special interest, is something. They don't
Yep.
give you money, Dan, or any
No.
other candidate
No.
without expecting something in return. And
Yep.
boy, oh boy, do we deliver. Republicans and Democrats, it's both parties
Mhm.
accepting monies for favors, for
Yeah.
preferential
Pay
treatment.
for play. What can you do for me?
And that is what term limits would cut off.
Yep.
Because and somebody says, yeah, but you wouldn't have the experience.
Don't
Experience at
care.
what? I just told you what experience I want. I want them to sit. Dan Bongino said it best today. I gotta do a visual of this. Dan Bongino. He does this often. Have you seen him do
Yeah.
this? He
Yeah.
says, this is
Stands up. Yeah.
stand up.
This is
That's
the
the old
ass.
bottom
You
says,
can go
put it
ahead.
in the seat and shut up.
Yeah. Shut up.
Don't say anything.
Yeah.
Follow the
Yep.
Constitution, which we don't do. I mean, Joe Biden, obviously, JB Pritzker, they don't
Yeah.
follow the Constitution. I mean,
Yeah.
they just believe it's a suggestion, not a constitution.
Well, the Democrats that come out and support Biden and his 150 years as a senator come out and say, well, his age is about experience. What has his experience gotten us? He's more arrogant than Barack Obama. He thinks that he's more liberal than Barack Obama, and he thinks he can do a better job at presidency, which he has far been better at Barack Obama destroying the country faster. Or Barack started it, but that's where we're at.
It's experience. It's
Yeah.
experience we don't need. Experience at what? Fleecing America?
Yeah.
It's experience of gaining power because
Yeah.
it the cow or the cows have left the barn. The horses have left the barn. That's what I meant to say. The cows have left probably too, and the pigs and the chickens. Everybody's left the barn.
We have
The
a
dog barn.
bartender and a Waffle House waitress in the U.S. House of Representatives, and their
Yes.
IQ is probably combined 30 on
Yeah.
issues that mean most to Americans. That's where we're at right now.
Well, and ultimately, as we said, you can have all the experience in the world. Experience doing what? Leading us to where we're at now? I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's not the experience I want. I don't want the experience of open borders. I don't want the experience of tanking the economy. I don't want the experience that you bring to the table. And that's on both sides of the aisle. I want
Yeah.
term limits across the board.
Yep.
Somebody said, how about term limits in the Supreme Court? I'd like to have a discussion about that. Should anybody be on any particular elected position for life? I don't know. There's an argument for it. Right now,
Mhm.
I would just want there to make sure that we don't start disrupting the judicial process or the judicial court.
Right.
They've been upended enough with the two-tier
Mhm.
system that has been put in place by a weaponized judicial
Right.
system in
Yep.
America under Joe Biden's regime. So there's a lot of cleanup on aisle 4 to do when Trump secures the nomination as president and then going into next January. I mean, where does the guy start? I know that
Mhm.
Jim Jordan had 3 great questions as
Mhm.
some of the things that need to be answered in the first week of a Trump presidency. 40, Trump 47, and those are. And I might not get the third one. You might remember the third one that Jordan came out and asked. He said, first of all, who placed the bombs on J6? That's a bigger
Mhm.
thing than anything else right now that we
Mhm.
discussed that here. Bongino's been covering it on his show.
Yep.
Who leaked the Dobbs ruling and put Brett Kavanaugh at risk?
Yep.
His life was threatened. And the third one, and it was equally as important, I'll have to dig it up and tell you, hopefully maybe on Thursday. Unless any of you out there listening remember, uh, send it to me in the chat. But I'm gonna have to go back there. I hate it when I do that. When I had 3 things, I only had 3 things to remember, Ryan. But DPB is losing it, man, because of all of this. But
Yeah.
let's get ourselves refocused
Yep.
on these races. So, um, Regan obviously won that race.
Yep.
Uh, Chuck got beat in his own county. And then of course it was downhill from there because she walloped him in Macon County. I mean, she was in the 80 percentile in that county. That county made up about 30% of the vote,
Mhm.
McLean County being 50%, and then the other counties, DeWitt and Piatt, being the remaining 20%. But winning 80% of a county, heck, she
Yep.
could have she could have withstood a 30% drop maybe
Mhm.
in McLean County, and Chuck had 70%. Chuck was hovering around 50%. Regan surpassed 50%. There's
Yeah.
my daughter Hannah Kathleen. Let's go DPP. Not only let's go DPP, it is go time, Hannah Kathleen. You're in a
Yep.
free state of Tennessee. Stay
Yeah,
there
absolutely.
because help is on the way. The cavalry is coming. No, it's not going to be a bloodbath. That only pertains to EV cars that can't
Yeah.
find their way down the highway or in a Hertz parking lot, out of a Hertz parking lot. But that's a whole other
Did you
show.
see Google change the definition of bloodbath too?
Oh, did they? Of course
Yeah.
they did.
Basically on incitement of riots is a bloodbath now, or anybody could be causing a bloodbath.
Even if you're talking about the economy as
Yeah.
it pertains to the auto
Yeah.
manufacturing
Yeah.
of combustible engines and not having sufficient amount of jobs in America, if you
Right.
refer to that economic downturn as a bloodbath, then that is inciting a riot. Because as Chuck Schumer says, President Trump tried to incite an erection on
Yeah.
January 6th. I mean, insurrection.
Quite
Thank
the
you, Chuck. Yeah,
yeah.
did you get that correct? And then many of them, Democrats, have also said the same thing, the
Yeah.
same faux pas, that Trump was exciting something other than an insurrection. But getting back to the races, so Reagan won the 88th. Then we move on to Dennis Tipsword was able to withstand
Yep.
a very formidable opponent in Don Reince, who is a true, tried, faithful
And do
conservative
you think
man.
Dennis's time as in law enforcement helped keep him propelled ahead of that? I mean, just because he's been out there, because he's made some grave
Yeah.
mistakes on his own policy, but that wasn't enough to kind of trip him up.
Well, and I think he's very liked in oh, hold
There
on.
you go. There you go
What
again. Did you
there I
monkey
go.
butt around over there?
What did I touch? What did I touch?
Did
Hold
you hit
on.
stop cam again?
I even if I put my cam start back on, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're cutting up a little bit, but maybe that's your camera.
Well, I got to figure out what chord did I hit. I told you Joe Biden's not the only one. As Barack Obama says about Joe Biden, he's not the only one that can manage really to mess things up. Hold on, let me see. That's camera.
Yeah,
Let me
there you
see
go.
here. Am I
Got
back
it,
on?
man.
It
Well, you
says
got
your
it back then.
browser has lost connection to your camera. Make
Okay.
sure you have the right camera selected. Close. Okay, let me see here.
Well, your audio is good.
My audio is good. Well, that's good. Let's go to the camera. Um,
Yeah.
camera.
Did you
Uh,
hit stop cam or any kind of other button?
no, I saw the stop cam, so I've already hit the start cam.
Okay, there
And
you go.
there. Oh,
Look at that. Quick fix.
don't touch any cords. DPB has the unsatiable way of making things a mess here in his studio, but I'm good to be in studio. But yes, with that race of Dennis Tipsword and Don Raines, Dennis obviously had one thrown over. He was only a state representative for one term
Right.
and made those what I believe almost catastrophic mistakes. Um,
Yeah.
Mark B, look at that. This could
Thank you,
just be
sir.
Ryan. You could be this. You're part of the family reunion with the Blumenshines here. You guys are doing a great job. Thank you,
Yeah.
brother Mark. I
Mhm.
appreciate you tuning in. And yes, you said you guys. That means that's inclusive of the Ryan Mack show. Ryan, make sure you put up the Ryan Mack show in there. But
Absolutely.
so anyhow, you got Rinks. Tipsword won that race. Then moving on to the 53rd state Senate seat, we have Chris Balkema, who outdistanced three other opponents. He ended up with 50%. He only needed 25% plus one vote. He was able to manage 50%, successful in that race. As we said earlier, congressionally, Judge Joe McGraw won out. And then now we get to the president of the United States of America, or our next president of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump,
Mm.
won handily over Nikki Haley with what, 80% of the vote. And
Yeah.
by the way, yours truly, as one of his alternate delegates, was honored
Yeah.
to have those who went out and voted for me. It looks like that I was able to achieve the most votes as the alternate amongst my other alternates. Not that that's really important.
Does the 17th not run up in this area because we only had a 16th district on
You
our
only have the
ballot?
16th.
That's what I thought.
The 17th literally comes in and grabs Bloomington Normal
Oh, okay, that's what I
proper
thought.
and escapes to the southwest and runs along the southern part of McLean County, Tazewell County. Then it jetties up into Peoria and grabs the
Mhm.
inner part of Peoria. Once again,
Yeah,
diabolical in their
yeah,
creation of
not an evenly
these
cut pie.
yeah, and then captures Knox County
Yeah,
and the counties to the western of Illinois.
and that one goes all the way up to Rockford, right? 17th?
Goes, believe me, the right turn it takes to get into Rockford, because above this thin strip of the 17th
Mhm.
is engulfed by the 17th. As I said, it takes. Hold on, I should have probably had pulled that map up, but
Yeah.
At McLean County, you can go out to the McLean County Republican Party's
Mhm.
website, and they have a view of the map, and it doesn't do it justice. I'll hope to get that map up here the next time. But needless to say, it's a thin strip, grabs Rockford. Darren LaHood has part of his district on the north side of Rockford and on the south side. He basically encompasses Rockford, but the Quad Cities,
Mhm.
McGraw, it's gerrymandered. It's actually a +2 district,
Yeah.
meaning the Dems have an advantage. It's hard to draw it any, you know, I guess they could have even butchered it even more, but it
Right.
used to be a safe seat for the Republicans.
Of course.
And then losing population, it
Mhm.
took us from 18 congressional seats down to 17. And now, based on the trajectory, we could lose another congressional seat.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why JB believes that we should have more people from that are coming into the country illegally deposited in
Yeah, you gotta
Illinois,
increase the population.
increase the population so they can run up. I know we're hitting a lot of territory here. Thank
That's
you,
alright.
Ryan,
Yeah.
for joining and
Yeah.
recapping doing this post-election.
Mhm.
I think we've got all the races I said the delegates. I do want to comment on that.
Yeah.
So it looks like all the Trump delegates are going to make it, which means that Trump himself will be selected as our nominee from the state of Illinois. I keep hearing this over and over, and it's been repeated. And I understand that Joe Biden ended up with about 200,000 more votes than Trump got in Illinois. We already discussed the low voter turnout.
Mm-hmm.
It saddens me that Republicans don't show up, or people, not just Republicans.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. My time, Republicans for the most part suck. I'm not talking about the ones that are involved, helping out, doing the work on the streets, whether it's be the precinct committee people working on campaigns. I'm talking about the Republicans that sit back and don't get involved with their local party and don't even show up and vote. Those are the ones who I say you suck.
Well, and how many of those votes that Joe got were Nikki Haley voters? You have
Yeah.
to count for that too. The ones that were so mad at Nikki Haley dropping out and losing, how many of those 200,000 were Nikki supporters that would have been Republicans?
You know what? That's a good point.
And she keeps saying that she lost, she won despite not being on the ballot, but she won 20%. So apparently for her, losing is winning. I don't understand.
You know, Ryan, you bring up a good point. I mean, I looked at her numbers, and they were very low. Well, I mean, it was a couple 100,000 that she achieved. So you make a good point. Did a lot of the Republicans, because that's why I say Republicans suck too, because they only support Republicans when they're their Republican candidate.
Yep.
And that's part of what this show is about today.
Yeah.
We've got a slate. I don't necessarily agree with some of the candidates who were selected, namely Mike Boss. But if I lived in the 12th congressional district, I would be casting a vote for Mike Boss. Now, granted, Mike isn't even going to be threatened by the Democrat that they put up against him. The guy's won, I think this is his third or fourth run against Mike, and he manages about 10%, 12% of the vote down in Southern Illinois, which fascinates me in of itself. Why is in the deep part of Illinois, why is it so Republican? And poverty is definitely right in front of your face. I was down not as far as Southern Illinois, but south of Effingham, and poverty is real down there. But yet those people believe in the American dream. They believe in the Constitution of the United States. As you kind of trend up to the north, that's where you see more of these people who are the anti-Trumpers, who are willing just to go all in for Nikki Haley or whether it was DeSantis, were those some of the DeSantis people. I know that there are enough anti-Trumpers. So it wasn't just anti-Trumpers on the side of Haley, but it was anti-Trumpers on the side of DeSantis too. I believe that he could, but still, that's a pretty solid number, and it's very consistent. And we're seeing that across the board when it comes to our statewide races here in Illinois. I pointed out before, J.B. Pritzker was able to manage 2.5 million votes in 2018 against Bruce Rauner, when Rauner defeated Pat Quinn, and Pat Quinn only had 1.6 million, 89,000. How did he go from 1.6 in 4 years, almost 800,000 votes? There's something to be said about cleaning up our voter rolls by getting involved, being a precinct committee person, going. I mean, we know that the system is broken. Eric, the Electronic Registration Information Center, has butchered our voter rolls in conjunction with the powers to be. We're only allowing it to happen because it is the Democrat way of running elections. They don't believe in fair and free elections. I truly believe that. They talk about suppression, voter suppression. They talk about everybody having a chance, but when they talk about everybody, they're not talking about registered voters. They're talking about everybody. Registered, legal, or even sometimes of age.
Yeah. Or even living.
Well, the
living, moved, no longer
living in the state, breathing, residing.
Yeah.
All right. We have 6 minutes. I thought, geez, the time flies. This is a little different than sitting in Darren Bailey's office, and it was an experience down there. And I know that some of you were able to catch that. I apologize once again for not being able to get on the StreamYard. It looks like we're back. Ryan and I are going to work together to perfect both the Ryan Mack show, the DPB show. We have to be the voice, the conservative voice in Central Illinois,
Yep.
because we have lost the live local appeal here because of decisions made by management at the local radio station. So therefore, we're going to up our game more in 2024. More in 2024. It is go time. But here's what I want to point out before we jump off. What
Yeah.
are some of the things that do we have to look forward to with Laura Trump taking the helm as the chairwoman of the Republican Party? I hope I didn't lose this off of my feed here. I might have to quote it directly. Where is this at? Oh, it's on my Facebook feed. I think I can get to it still. Bear with me. It's a little scrolling, but it timed out on me. But here it is. Come on, DPB. Get to it. There it is. Cheney's suppressed evidence scandal blows up the insurrection narrative. Oh, rebranding of the GOP. There we are live. Let's get down to the points at hand of what the plan of attack is. Number one, Ryan, are you ready?
Yep, ready.
A mass voter registration initiative. This is part of why Laura Trump immediately moved to get. Are you familiar with Scott Pressler?
Yeah.
Real tall guy, went around the nation, did a bunch of cleanup activities in Baltimore, did a bunch of registration events, has personally registered over 50,000 voters. Personally.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah.
So copying the model of places like Florida and Kentucky, which in recent years corrected longstanding disparities between registered Republican and Democrat voters in both states by systematically targeting unregistered voters. That's where it's at. In addition to disgruntled former Democrats and independents who gravitated towards the MAGA movement, which MAGA, once again, just for those people that hear this later and are questioning what that is, Make America Great Again. And I love it when the libs say, when was America great?
Yeah.
What do you mean, when was America great? Are you kidding me? Go get a history book. Go read something other than NPR and the New York Times and the Atlantic and the Guardian and all the other sources where you derive the Rolling Stone. I think a lot of them spend time
the
reading
most
the Rolling
credible
Stone.
source.
Yeah. but the MAGA movement, not only to the aforementioned states, now command more Republicans than Democrat registrants overall. So that's the part. Going out, attacking. Number two, repeatedly, the RNC should employ Scott Pressler, that's him, that's what I just said, and other voter registration groups, particularly those with accomplished track records of educating and registering voters. These groups will be tasked with learning the electoral landscape intimately in pivotal battleground states or battlegrounds, especially in the key swing counties such as Maricopa, Philadelphia, and Fulton County, which were rife with fraud and rank corruption in 2020, and relaying that information back to the RNC. Number three, lawfare efforts should be made and lawyers deployed. We need to create a legitimate war room with attorneys like Mark Elias. I can't stand the man. I believe he's criminal. However, we need a Mark Elias. And right now in the state of Illinois, I have a guy that I like him. He's a great guy. He serves a purpose, John Fogarty, but he's no Mark Elias. I don't think he wants to be Mark Elias. But you know, John, we need you to find us a Mark Elias, and they exist out there. You know, Chuck Erickson, you could be a Mark Elias.
Yep.
You're an attorney.
Yep.
If I'm challenging you, Chuck, you might not have won the 88th, but be a Mark Elias. Start fighting legally for the Republican Party. We have plenty of lawyers. Darren LaHood's a lawyer, former federal prosecutor. Start fighting and prosecuting. Start filing charges. Start doing something. Please, if you're not going to do something, do I have to stand up and give the demonstration, the Bongino demonstration again?
Yep, do it.
Then sit your bottom down in your chair and shut your mouth, because what you are doing is not helping the matter. But anyhow, like paratroopers, that's what he's talking about. Lawyers like paratroopers. Now they're gonna change the meaning of paratroopers too.
Yeah.
That's a violent term, particularly in pivotal battleground cities such as Philadelphia and Atlanta. The goals of these groups are twofold: monitor election procedures and ensure compliance with such procedures by state and local party leaders to maximize transparency in the process and to ensure that the unlawful methods used by the Democrats in 2020, such as late night vote dumps, are exposed and thwarted. And two, to extend the fraud does to the extent fraud does occur, these groups should be already strategizing to provide notice to courts about potential lawsuits and begin accumulating evidence and crafting legal arguments now, well in advance of election day. That's why I'm saying go time. We've got to start doing that today.
Mm-hmm.
Today. You know, my plan is to put every time I saw a Mike O'Neill 4x4 sign or a Brian Loeffler 4x4 sign, I'm
Mm-hmm.
now convinced that we need to replace those with a Trump presidency sign
Yeah.
here in McLean County. We need to we need to run Trump right to the nth degree
Mm-hmm.
all around this county, wherever we can. I'm planning on it.
Yep.
We'll get about 1,500 yard signs, about 150 4x4 signs, and we're going to turn our county Trump.
There we go.
I want to see it. I want it to look like Southern Wisconsin, you know, the
Let's do it.
support that Trump got up there. So bottom line is that's the lawfare. We've got to do that. Number 4, I know we're up over an hour. Moreover, in addition to pursuing strategic deployment of lawfare methods in key battleground states, the RNC should also deploy lawyers to monitor censorship on big tech platforms like Meta, Google, and Apple. Hey, just a side note, and I know we're over time. Did you see AOC asking the questions on the congressional hearing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Of Bob Alinsky, you know,
Oh my
former
gosh.
business partner.
RICO is not a crime.
Well, yeah, you're on a live mic and you said Rico is, and Bongino said you just have to go to the left-leaning Google search and
Yeah.
put in Rico and find the definition as a criminal activity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why they charge people with it, because it is a criminal act.
Yeah, let's see. Trump was charged in Fulton County by Fannie
Yeah,
of
under the
what?
RICO Act. Yeah.
Oh wow! What a
Yeah.
concept!
Weird.
Somebody help! Somebody please help AOC out.
Only criminal if Trump
She
does it.
is, you know, if ever there was a drowning going on, that is AOC and Joe
Yeah.
Biden. I mean, you guys don't have enough lifeguards. That should be number 5. Let's see. Is there a number 5? There is, but we should put number 6 if it's not here. Deploy the lifeguards to save these people. They're drowning. And all right.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I started saying deploy to basically go after, to use lawyers against big tech platforms such as Facebook, Google, who are going to try to interfere with elections. Number 5, the RNC, working in close coordination with the Trump campaign, should appoint a state director aligned, work wholeheartedly with MEGA. Yes.
Yep.
We have to have a state director here locally. That's what I was looking for when Darren Bailey. What a great resource Darren would be if he was the state director of the Trump campaign in Illinois. Nobody has stood with Trump, tried and true, more than Darren Bailey. And as I said earlier in the show, I would like to see Darren Bailey as a presidential candidate someday. I believe he has what it takes because he is anointed by God. And when I say anointing, it means that he lives a godly life, which is not a perfect life, but a godly life. It means he seeks God with all of his heart, all of his soul, and all of his mind. This article goes on. RNC should also help get the ball rolling in planning the next administration. And that was the 6th. It was a 6-tier point. Thank you for hanging with me today. That was more content than I thought we were going to get out. Thank you, Ryan, as always, for coming on to the DPB show. Don't forget Ryan Mack Show. Go out, listen to Ryan Mack. We're trying to work at perfecting this thing because, as I said earlier, we need a conservative voice in Central Illinois. We need a means of relaying information, talking about these candidates, talking about our own party, because that's where it starts. I'm not in charge of the Democrat Party. They're a
Yep.
train wreck in of itself. I'm
Yep.
concerned about the Republican Party because first and foremost, I'm a Christian conservative who votes Republican. Are the Republicans the solution to all the problems going on? No, the absence of God in our country is the cause of all the problems in our world.
Mhm.
The Republicans aren't the solution, but I'll tell you right now, the cause of all of our problems is the Democrat Party. And
Absolutely.
whatever it takes, I stand fully behind Mike O'Neill, Brian Loeffler, and all those who won office, Regan Deering. Those are my candidates. That's who I get behind. As I said earlier, even Mike Bost. If I were I will be uh, from this point forward saying that I would vote for Mike Bost if I were in the 12th congressional district. I do
Yep.
look forward to the day that Mike Bost is defeated in the 12th congressional district because I believe that 40 years in government is too long. I
Yeah.
hope all of you agree with us on that. Don't forget there is a conference being held, the Illinois 5th Constitutional Convention. It is happening at the Chateau April 4th through the 6th. Definitely go out there. The link is up in the comment section there. Cities
Mhm.
92.9 is advertising it. Uh, hey, we are well past overtime. Thank you
Yep.
once again. Thank you. We're going to continue this conversation. Hopefully, Darren Bailey will be able to join us on Tuesday of next week. The weekend's going to happen. A lot of things are going to work themselves out. This Tom Homan, we're going to be back on Tuesday to talk a little bit about Tom Homan and what happens in that symposium at the Doubletree tomorrow night. I bid you guys all a peace that surpasses all understanding. Don't forget, as I always say, that I love you, but Jesus loves you more. Uh, Next week is Holy Week, Ryan, but that
Yep.
doesn't mean the DPB is going to take any time off. We will be here Tuesdays and Thursday. Oh, Ryan, you might have to pitch hit for me on Thursday. I don't know if I can work that out doing my podcast. I'm going to Zach Williams up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm going to go
Oh,
to the
nice.
Zach Williams concert.
There you
So
go.
I'm going to be on the road, but I'm going to try to get up there to be able to do it on my handheld device, the DPB show, to give you a little bit of insight to whatever transpires between now and next Thursday. And I know a lot will, but hey, until next time, my friend, I'm going to shut off the end stream. I know Ryan's going to hang around with me so we can chatter because that's what we do
Yep.
after DPB show. We have the second edition, the after the DPB
The
show.
after hours.
That's right, the after hours. All right. Well, I bid you all a farewell, but not goodbye. We shall see you soon.